On today's show, we're going to paraphrase Jimmy Butler, and I'm going to ask Tobias Harris for what? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
I'm Chris Manning. I cover the Cavs and the NBA for places like Diamond, UPROXX, SB Nation, and Cleveland Magazine, as well as the Just Basketball Show. That man over there is Evan Dammarell, the proprietor of Down Euclid. As always, we have Jake Stevens producing, and thanks again to our friends at Astro Radio for the intro music. Today's show is going to be all about Tobias Harris. Evan, let's start with this. Daryl Morey, Elyria native Daryl Morey, may I add. It always comes back to Ohio. Is out here looking to trade Tobias Harris for like $2 on the dollar. Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Locked On Sixers, wrote this last week, or wrote this over the weekend. So technically last week. Last week, sources told the Inquirer, the Sixers are overvaluing Harris and asking for, quote, outrageous packages in return. That goes in line with what a source said the Sixers told the Cavs what it would take days before the draft. A package of Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and a draft pick. That is to trade for Tobias Harris. In the story, Pompey wrote that, quote, teams think...
It makes me laugh every time I hear that trade proposal.
I think about it a lot since I was sent to me by a friend of the program, Bill DiFilippo, who was like, Chris, did you see this? And I said, no, and then my brain exploded. In the story, he also wrote that Morey, quote, that teams think, quote, Morey isn't negotiating in good faith, end quote. So, like, look, this is just the baseline, Evan. There is not a world where you're trading Evan Mobley, much less Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and a draft pick for Tobias Harris. And if we're thinking about Tobias Harris as a draft pick, this kind of offer just means you should stop thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, it was like that was the hypothetical. Then there was like that DeAndre Ayton hypothetical that was in the ether as well. My introduction to this trade was known Sixers fan and a friend of the program, Jordan Christmas, floating it to me. And I'm just like, excuse me, what? And then he said that they're really going to run it back. And I'm going to be furious because they're doing stuff like this. Because he agreed that, and I agree as well, that Morey is definitely not negotiating in good faith. And I said, listen, he's like, you don't even know how bad it is. I said, yeah, from the outside, it looks bad. From the inside, I don't know what it's like in that submarine, but it's going to collapse at some point. But either way, Tobias Harris is interesting to me because on paper, sure, he's a little older. I believe he's 30 or turning 30 soon. But he is a bigger 3-4 type player.
He's 31, by the way.
Okay, so
31,
there we go. Yeah. There we go. But either way, he... on paper checks all the boxes what the Cavs need. It's just he's making $39 million, and it is really hard to put together a substantial enough package that, and I believe Chris Fedor noted like the Cavs inquired on Tobias Harris as well. So like this tracks for sure. And maybe Morey is negotiating in good faith, but it's just financially it doesn't work. And that's just kind of like my end all be all with this situation. I'm just like, well, that's bold for sure. And makes you wonder what Philly would do with Mobley and Allen on that team, or if they reroute them somewhere else. But the trade wouldn't happen. If it did, I would be actually stunned. I'm flipping a Raising Cane's gift card in my hand right now. If that trade did happen, I would eat this Cane's gift card live on camera just to show you how confident I am on it. So, yeah, rock on, Daryl Morey. Shoot your shot. I wouldn't expect no less from a Highland Hornet.
What I think this says about the trade market, and I also think we'll get into later what the Cavs really have to offer, like what would be their all-in trade package. Mm-hmm. You probably are not making that trade package for Tobias Harris if you're sound of mind. You're not going all in for someone like Tobias Harris. He's a good player, but he's making $39 million, and you don't have a lot to trade. What I think this tells you, I think if you read scuttlebutt about the prices for wings, or we've talked to people about this, like some of the prices for some of the players that the Cavs I think would probably like to get in the market for are really high. I think every team right now that has things to trade seemingly is putting the price really high right now. Harris in particular, it's like if you're Daryl Morey, I understand why you're asking for the moon, but it's also just like you're not even going to get into real trade proposals if you're asking for the moon. And if you want to be like, okay, why don't the Cavs do anything? Keep in mind that they do have to negotiate with teams, and maybe they're getting stuff like this in other spots. Maybe not this crazy, but close to it.
You had mentioned selling the farm or maybe rerouting your plans development-wise for Tobias Harris. Philly's a great case study of it because, as you had mentioned, Jimmy Butler made it very well known that they chose Tobias Harris over him. And that
Tobias Harris over me?
Exactly.
I think about
everyone. If you're an audio listener, you may have jumped like I did when that audio peaked when Chris yelled.
Right.
Jake, I hope your ears aren't bleeding while you're editing that from the scare. But either way, it is just interesting because like Tobias Harris is a high-end role player. He's a starter. He's technically an all-star because he's gotten those honors too. But I've always had this stance, and I think Kevin Love just having such a mammoth contract and such suboptimal production, especially because of his injury history, definitely put him as the front runner for like worst contract in the NBA for the longest time. But like Tobias Harris's contract was pretty bad because I'm just like, wow, they're paying him a lot of money. I know it's a premium position, but he's not a superstar. And I laughed as we were like I pulled up the number just to see exactly how much he was making. Tobias Harris was Philly's highest paid player last season. He made more money than Joel Embiid and James Harden last year. It's so weird just how his contract works. And I don't know, maybe there is a team who wants to talk shop and maybe they can finagle a trade with Philly in that way. But you know what? Good on Cleveland for kind of just leaving no stone unturned in terms of upgrading depth on the perimeter. But this is definitely a pipe dream for sure, especially with just like what that hypothetical is. Yeah.
And then, I mean, the other funny part about this is that his dad / his agent is out here talking about how they don't use him properly. The quote is, "Personally, I don't think so. The reason I say that, well, Tobias is an assassin scorer. I mean, they can't stop him. Nobody in the league can stop him. So he's proven over his career, even when he was with the Clippers, he was an assassin scorer." That's just funny. That just is. This is very funny.
I mean, the second round of the playoffs stops him pretty consistently. So
not having Doc Rivers as his coach has also been like a thing where
the other thing, like Doc Rivers, for whatever reason, is a Tobias Harris like whisperer because Harris struggled after he signed that extension. And then they fire Brett Brown, bring in Doc, and then Tobias Harris starts like just killing it again like he did for the Clippers. And to his dad's point, yeah, he was awesome for the Clippers, but he was also their number one option.
And he's also not unstoppable. And breaking news, he gets traded to any team. You know, the Suns are reported as interested. A team like Cleveland that has Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, that's not going to be his role. If you want to be like the second fiddle on a really good team, you'd probably be like, can I go to Portland and play with Dame? But say la vie. All right, after the break, we're going to talk about about Harris as an actual fit, like his skill set, what he does. Does this tell us anything about what the Cavs are looking for?
We're going to be nice to Tobias Harris after we just kind of dumped on him and his contract for the last 10 minutes.
Look, I say this to everyone who's making lots of money, even if we can call them bad contracts. It is not a bad contract for Tobias Harris. It is a bad contract for the NBA teams that have to pay it. Tobias Harris, congratulations on securing the bag, my guy. I love that for you. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. Also, you get them at the right price. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, you can head to eBay Motors. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts for the right fit and the right price on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, and exclusions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day, everydayers. Evan, I'll be back tomorrow talking about Emoni Bates' rookie year outlook and other Cavs signees. There's another Nance. We'll talk about the other Nance. Evan, so Tobias Harris' skill set. Bigger 3-4 type. Not an elite perimeter defender, but a solid enough one. Can do some DHO stuff. Can shoot it. Just like a solid guy to play between a couple spots for you. Last year, he was 41.2% at catch and shoot threes. Pretty good.
Yeah.
I think this reminds me of like the Lauri Markkanen role, who can be like a decent defender. You can play him at the 3 and then slide him to the 4 when one of the big sits. Like this skill set is kind of like what Markkanen was, but B, also what like kind of Dean Wade is supposed to be at a much lower number.
Yeah, and this is what I was kind of talking about before, is just like Tobias Harris on paper fits the mold of what the Cavs are kind of looking for as at the 3 spot, just in particular, because he provides you that perimeter scoring. He provides you spacing more than anything. He wouldn't be the number 1 option if he were somehow playing in Cleveland. I'm sorry, Dad, but if he's like your 4th or 5th banana and a guy who takes advantage of the gravity and attention that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland face on the outside, or like what Jared Allen and Evan Mobley have to deal with down low, like, yeah, he would be really great in that role. As you mentioned, he's not the best perimeter defender, but I think having that 2-headed monster and Mobley and Allen on the interior it's okay if he gets blown past sometimes, but it would be interesting to see how he works. But yeah, like I said in the first segment, he ticks a lot of the boxes of what the Cavs need, and why I'm intrigued of them like going after like a bigger guy to play small forward for them in free agency this summer. Is just so like they can have more roster fluidity and creativity that allows like Harris to go between, or like a guy like Harris rather, who goes between the 3 and the 4. So you can see some Mobley at the 5 or Allen at the 5, and like obviously Allen at the 5, but a little bit just more creativity so the Cavs can be a little bit more dynamic and sprinkle in some modernity to this antiquated style of basketball they play.
Do you think Dean Wade is good enough, or let me phrase it this way? What do you think the Cavs reportedly kicking the tires in some way in Tobias Harris tells us what they think about their in-house options to fill this role?
I mean, let's be frank. If you base it off production this season, or especially in the postseason, they don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of bodies that are viable. Maybe 5 viable guys against the Knicks, and that was their starting 5. Like the bench was just an abject disaster for them. And to your question, just like focusing through the lens of Dean Wade specifically, it's a fair one. I think if Wade was fully healthy, we don't know if he was ever 100% out there, of course, but like his shot just disappeared, and he tries hard, and he kind of tries to do a lot of the hustle and grind out plays that you appreciate, or a guy who like is trying to find his flow at least, and like know like, hey, I can earn minutes playing defense. You appreciate that, but it's just weird. It's like, one, I think it's the injury just killed a lot of momentum and confidence, but like Dean Wade's confidence evaporated when he was inserted in the starting lineup, where he wasn't looking to take those open shots. He was looking to pass them to Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland when you just need him to rip it. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, because I think if he's healthy and confident, it's a little bit different, of course. And I think that at least gives the Cavs a guy who can come off the bench a little bit more reliably for them. But them exploring the market is just, I would have to say them doing their due diligence, making sure that they can find clear and tangible upgrades, because Kobe Allman didn't reveal much, but he did stress like, hey, we need to add depth on the perimeter, especially just in terms of shooting. And yeah, Tobias Harris fits that mold. How do you feel about it?
I think it tells us that like they're going to kick the tires on a bunch of different things this offseason. I think a lot of teams right now, I think the Cavs included, the rumors about them are like, it's not as loud out there for Cleveland as it is for like Phoenix, or pick a bunch of these other good teams right now, right? It's a little bit different there, and there's not like the Karis LeVert free agency stuff is not going to get the same attention as James Harden's, right? Like they're shooting like this is just a out of the headline summer to some degree, but I think this tells us that they're going to kick the tires on some stuff. They're going to call around us. So if it's their due diligence, not everything that they do obviously ever gets out there, but I think it tells us that they're probably looking for something a little more trustworthy than Dean Wade. I think if we go back to the Lauri Markkanen signing, it's kind of clearly identified that Kobe Altman in the front office liked that skill set. Like that was like okay, Kevin Love succession plan, and then you get Dean Wade, who does different stuff, but kind of does some plays in that same mold. You obviously trade Markkanen to get Donovan Mitchell. You know, Markkanen was not going to have the breakout he had last year in Cleveland if he had stayed in Cleveland, I don't think. Just wasn't going to be set up for him to do that. I think there's just like they look at having like a bigger guy who can shoot and allow them to switch between styles is something they're missing. And I wonder if you asked them truthfully and got them to answer honestly, if they would look back at last year and say that their confidence in Dean Wade has just dropped based on how the end of the year went for him and how he wasn't really a factor for the 5 games they were in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. Again, there's a lot of questions there's a lot of questions about this Cavs team in general. And you had mentioned Markkanen. It is an interesting thought exercise to think like, okay, maybe there's a different reality where the Cavs don't acquire Donovan Mitchell and they still have Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji on this roster. And it's interesting to think about like how that would look. Would the Cavs pay Lauri Markkanen like to another extension after they signed him in free agency? But I don't know. It's just like Dean Wade to me, he's more than like the break glass in case of emergency depth player where like you throw him out there if you needed some type of answer and he's not going to be overwhelmed by the moment. But he's also not a guy where I'm saying like, yeah, he's consistently a part of this rotation. Like he's like right on the fringe, and if he plays well, reward that, you give him more minutes. But if he starts to falter like he did, especially in the postseason or just in general leading up to the postseason, you can pull the leash on him back a little bit, and then you can just go ahead and put somebody else in his place. So to your point, though, like they are going to kick the tires on any wing player that has a pulse that kind of fits the mold of what they need. So I'm interested to see how they go about it, but the odds are stacked against them for sure.
Yeah, let's go into break here. Let's talk about the other big things that the Cavs can actually trade. What can they actually trade? We'll talk about that next. All right, Evan, this is what I've put down as the Cavs all-in trade offer if they had to make one today. They were going to do like, just say, we're going to offer everything we can. This is what they could do right now, pre-free agency. It'd be Allen, any future seconds, Dean Wade, Cedi Osman's contract because they have the non-guarantee you can use.
Oh,
Rubio's salary would be in there as well. That changes if you keep Karis LeVert. You could then trade him. You could sign and trade him, I don't think that's super likely. It's not the most appealing, like, all-in kind of trade package or aggregate a bunch of salaries package, right? Like, it's not overwhelming teams, I think, with what they can offer right now.
I agree.
Where were you going before I could?
So the Cedi Osman thing, there's actually something interesting I kind of found out as I was just, checking up on like payroll, stuff like that for just teams. Cause I was thinking about like trades the Cavs can make as well. I'm like, okay, who are some actual like realistic targets? What's their all-in offer? Well, I'm really, really scrolling here. Cedi Osman's salary becomes fully guaranteed in June 29th. And so 4 days from when we're recording, 3 days from when this episode drops on Monday. So if the Cavs want to use that non-guaranteed salary luxury they have with Osman, they have 3 days to make a trade happen, or we're going to see the Cavs say like, okay, he's actually a shooting wing. Maybe a team has some intrigue in that, but the Cavs are kind of pressed to make a move here. But like you said, like future seconds, that moves the needle for some teams. Isaac Okoro could be intriguing to a team that's willing to devote the time, energy, and resources to develop him. Maybe a team like San Antonio takes a stab at him, but Jared Allen he's making $20 million and like it cleanly fits for a lot of teams, but like a team like Dallas was an organization that made a lot of sense for Allen, but then they went and got Rashawn Holmes, and then they drafted that kid out of Duke as well. And like,
yeah, they
addressed their need at the center position, at least a little bit. It's obviously not perfect, but it's better than it was before this. And it allows the Mavericks to kind of shift their focus to, okay, what's going on with Christian Wood? Can we bring Kyrie back? What can we do to maximize what we have around Luka and Kyrie? Like the center option trade with Dallas like evaporated fairly quickly. One, because the Mavericks found a team that's willing to take on Berton's contract, and two, they still got their guy, and then they're able to get Holmes as well, who fell into Mike Brown's rotation, but I think is a fine enough player to provide you serviceable minutes. And Yeah, it's tough because then you look at the rest of the league. Like, okay, who really wants a five, like a traditional five who doesn't shoot? And there's not many teams I think that are going to be lining up the trade for Jared Allen.
Yeah, look, I don't think this is the Allen.
We're not
trade summer.
This is not the Allen trade summer, and I also say this too. In my eyes, Jared Allen's value to the Cavs is much, much more comparatively to what his value is across the league. And it's just that weird spot where like he means more to Cleveland than he may mean to any other team in the league.
Yeah, and what I just also tend to look at with this is just I think what we're talking about, the Tobias Harris stuff, I think barring like them slipping into the back end deal, I don't think the Cavs have the juice with some of these stuff. And I should have mentioned Okoro. That was a good shot by you. I should have, like, he's in the all-in trade package if you're going to do it. And I still kind of do maintain that if they don't trust him at this point, maybe you should try to flip him now before, like, maybe you should. They don't have like a trade they can throw at another team that's like really moves the needle for another team. It would be shuffling. It'd be like both teams kind of just rearranging deck chairs a little bit, I think is what this would feel like. Now, the Osman thing I think still has okay value when you get to, if it gets guaranteed, that's still an expiring salary you can use. Like, it's not nothing. It's a little bit, it feels less sexy if you don't have the guarantee. I would be really curious to see, you know, you'll never know. It's hard to see what some of this is. You know, what other what other teams have, like, you know, we've heard that the Cavs have taken off. Teams have called about Jared Allen. It has been pick offers and it's been player offers. I would love to know like what the quality of those offers is. It's like kind of hard to tell, but that's like the big question in all this is what is the value? Is there one other team that's like, yeah, we'll give you like $120 on the dollar for Jared Allen? I would doubt that's the case after the playoffs, though.
Yeah, I doubt that's the case after the playoffs. And again, like I said, he is a traditional five in the sense that he doesn't shoot threes. Sometimes he makes the right pass, but it's not like Jokic level stuff or like a guy who's just able to make like run the offense more or less, like run a pick and roll. And so it's limited what Jared Allen can provide you. And that's kind of unfortunate, but like, that's why you see a team like Atlanta, who's like desperately trying to move off of Clint Capella's contract because he's in a similar vein to Allen. And like teams don't really, that's the hard thing with being a big man in the NBA, especially just from that skill set. Some teams are comfortable with like just grabbing cheaper options and just amassing depth that way. Some teams like Dallas are okay with paying JaVale McGee way too much money. And then there's like guys like Jared Allen who were legitimately good, like an all-star level player, like a very good defensive player, but he has his limitations. And like you said, like, I just don't think there's going to be a team that's like, yeah, we'll trade you quite a bit for Jared Allen. Like the Cavs would have to be blown away, I believe, by the offer, just because one, he has more value to them than he does most teams in this league, and two, it's just hard to like figure out the financials and the flexibility of it all. Like you had mentioned, like Tobias Harris going to Phoenix, and like DeAndre Ayton would be the linchpin in that trade, and then the report at least is Ayton would have to be moved to a third team with asset.
Yeah.
Role players and depth pieces going to Philly, maybe a little bit more heading to Phoenix as well, because Phoenix is so locked up with money right now. And that makes you think like, okay, what if you reverse that a little bit and you think, is there a team that's willing to take on Jared Allen to acquire some depth pieces to kind of facilitate this trade? So Tobias Harris comes to Cleveland with that. Then again, there's the issue. Like the Cavs still have to find a way to find that like additional $19 million to acquire Tobias Harris. And like, that's Ricky Rubio, Dean Wade, Jetty Osman's stuff. Like, are you willing to gut your entire like asset pool for Tobias Harris? No, I don't think you should do that because you don't have many assets already to begin with.
So just so we can say it for the record, you're saying you wouldn't trade Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and picks for Tobias Harris?
No, no, I would not. Would you?
No, that's the whole point of what I'm doing. This is a bit, Evan. This is a bit.
It's good. It's good to know.
Evan, if I came on here and told you, hey, I think the Cavs should have done that trade, I hope you would like never talk to me again, if I'm being honest.
I'd send a wellness check, or I'd be like, all right, are you able to do 10 push-ups unlike Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? So,
all right. Well, no, we're not going there. We're not.
No, it's just it's just weird stuff. What a weird weekend. Just to cycle back to your point. Yeah. I think just the takeaway, if you really are listening to two dudes talk about Tobias Harris and the Cavs, like the trade just will not and cannot happen. That offer is comical. Like I thought it was like an Onion thing, or maybe like Barry tricking somebody again, or whatever that one fake troll account is on Twitter that always gets like aggregated at the worst possible times by people. I don't know. Like that just, I'm like, that's a lot, especially for your fourth banana in this core that you've built in Jared Allen, and arguably your most important player for the future in Evan Mobley. For a guy in Tobias Harris, who I dumped on quite a bit, but he does fit a lot of the needs that Cleveland currently has. But like, it's so much money. It is so much money.
Yeah, it is not going to be a situation where I think the Cavs are going to be able to get a $39 million player.
No, I have one more question for you. Well, let's say, like, hypothetically speaking, they did acquire Tobias Harris. What would that do to them with the new CBA? Would like that put them like dangerously close to that tax apron?
Yeah, I'd have to like actually crunch it, but they would be $39 million, 20. Like you'd have a very expensive roster, and I think you'd be basically like kind of in a very tricky situation, especially because like the other part of the Harris thing, I think that's kind of built into this is if you trade for him and you give up anything real for him, you're probably committing to re-signing him, and that's where you get into like the real financial situation, because you'd have to plan for like Evan Mobley's future contract, the possible new Donovan Mitchell contract, Garland's extension keep going up. Like you'd have
you don't have to worry about the Evan Mobley contract if Tobias Harris came here. So,
well, let's just say they get to keep Evan Mobley, and then you're like, sure. You're not like that. Like you just get into a spot where like, not so much this year, but like a year or two from now, you start getting into really tricky spots. You might be going there anyway, but maybe don't rush into that unless you're like the Phoenix Suns. All right, that's going to do it for today, though. Everydayers, we're going to be back tomorrow talking about Amoni Bates' rookie year outlook and more stuff about the Cavs.
That's how much money Tobias Harris, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland combined would make next year.
And that's still not as crazy as it's $105 million for those not watching on YouTube. It's still not as much as where the Celtics are headed, but that's still just like an obscene amount of money. And how teams handle some of this stuff,
the Suns are at now.
Yes. All right. Back tomorrow. Thanks again. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for production. Peace out, everybody.